Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to Fire Engineering Humpday Hangout with sponsored by the Clarion Events Group. And you're here with our traditions training instructors and the big boss, Bobby Halden. It's been a while since we've seen him. I'm sure his schedule's a little busier than most of us, but we're glad to have him on. We're obviously going to get his update of the upcoming event here we got in April. But today's discussion with Josh Burchick, Samuel Hiddle, and Scott Kraut, and myself is we wanted to talk a little bit about curriculum-based training, or initial recruit training or initial firefighter one, and why that has to be done, and then as opposed to as we go on to our and more advanced training, whether it be through a training company, through FDIC, or through your company officer, what the differences in that training are. So, but guys, I want to do a quick shout out's probably a bad word. I just want to everybody to take a moment and remember Don Abbott, obviously an incredible instructor, founder of the Mayday Project. He had many projects and help advance the fire service. I was just teaching last weekend in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and used a bunch of his information, and his information was relevant whether you were a 1-year firefighter or a 50-year firefighter. He had great information, and I can't imagine the labor of love he put into that Mayday project, just collecting all that data. And obviously, we're sad to see him go, and but obviously his legacy will live on with his programs and obviously the information he passed on to all of us. So, so Bobby, what's going on with FDIC?
Oh, a whole bunch. It's funny not funny. It's sad you bring up Don. And gosh, I've known Don for maybe 40 years. I remember when Don just retired out of Indianapolis, and he was going around the country with his Dynorama, which is if you've ever seen a model railroad set, he'd built a city to teach incident command, and a bunch of the usual suspects collaborated with him on it. Chief B, Bruce Barner, a bunch of guys and gals, and a fellow named Glenn Usden, who was a great guy too. Glenn's still kind of active, but Don was doing incident command on this Dynorama, and it was really cool. And then he went down to Phoenix, and it was really cool. He was working down there with Chief B on the command training center. And then Project Mayday moved back to the Indianapolis area about 2 or 3 years ago, and taught at FDIC last year, and did a great class on his Mayday project, as you said. So it's just a great guy, and I think thank you for remembering him, and thank you for doing that, because you only get a certain amount of time, and there's no guarantees. I lost a neighbor yesterday also who was just 44. So had a stroke, died of a stroke, healthy as healthy as any one of us, and died of it very young, two doors down from my wife and I. And so you never know. And so keep him in your thoughts and prayers. We remember people while they're living, but we should always remember them in some quiet prayer when they leave, and pass them along to their next project. I'm sure Don's already organizing stuff up there in heaven with, I think we can have a better command system here. So some really cool stuff going on at FDIC this year. There's going to be some really, really neat special events going on. Great lineup for the hands-on training. Some new classes with new extrication courses, with some modern vehicles. The Writ Under Fire folks are coming back. A couple of really cool new classes. Obviously, they're going to sell out fast. A lot of live fire, which is really cool. I think nine of the hands-on training classes have full CAPC credit. So if you need EMS credits for your EMT license or your paramedic license, you can get them in hands-on training now. And then the conference has hundreds of courses. Classes are also CAPC accredited. 230 hours of CAPC credit available at FDIC this year, which is more than most EMS conferences. So, and you can only get as many hours as there are, in the day, but, so that's really cool. The first time we've really done that. We've all got our EMT licenses or our first responder certification or our paramedic licenses, and keeping those up is always something we got to do. And now you can, while you're at FDIC, you can grab some. Got some amazing new courses. The Women in Fire are coming back. They've got a great program lined up for you. The people from FESHE, which is the higher fire service higher education people, they're doing a 2-day pre-conference deal, which is free. And it's open to any firefighter who wants to attend it, about FESHE, what they're doing, curricula development, which we're going to be talking about today. And FESHE is basically higher education. So you're talking about your associate's degree and your baccalaureate and your doctorate, in the fire service. Those are the folks who kind of direct that field of study. They've been doing it for the last 25 years. So they're going to be holding a 2-day open conference. The North American training directors are going to be doing a 2-day deal on Wednesday and Thursday for North American training directors and training directors, kind of a train the trainer kind of thing on training directors, which is, obviously what we talk about here on this particular Humpday Hangout. We talk all about training. We're talking about curriculum-based training, which is really the ballpark for your state training directors, your regional your county training directors. So that's really, that's their bread and butter, right? The curriculum-based training. So that's going to be really cool. DOD is coming back. We're going to have the National Guard doing a 5-day training thing there, which is really cool. We've got the IFD's brand new training academy is going to be open. So we're going to have some hands-on training classes there. The Fool's Bash is still on. The Fun Run is still on. The Stair Climb is on. Stop, Drop, Rock and Roll is on. The Union Party is on. All of those higher education events that I know Sam is always at. I don't see Sam often in a classroom, but I often catch him. I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing my good buddy Sam. So all the traditional stuff is gone. Plus, I don't want to get ahead of our marketing people, but 5 or 6 really, really exciting new events that that are going to be happening that are just going to blow you away. Just some really cool things. So just exciting. I can't wait to do it one more, again, take the stage one more time, or, getting up there and that'll be great. We got Brian Brush from the Rescue Project. He's going to be taking the stage. You got Danny Sheridan from FDNY, Chief Sheridan. He's going to take the stage. And then Brian Zaitz, who's with the Instructor Society, he's going to be taking the key. He's going to be taking the stage. So we got 3 really great speakers. You got Brush, Sheridan, and Zaitz. That they should be fantastic. Steve Chikarotis from Chicago Fire. He's going to be getting lifetime achievement. So that's going to be amazing. Steve is just an icon. He worked on Backdraft as a subject matter expert, and now he's the SME for Chicago Fire. And every now and then I'll be watching this TV show and I'll see something and I shoot him a note like, really? And he'll write back one word: Hollywood. You just got to let it go, right? Like, you ever see the face pieces those guys wear in Chicago Fire? The face piece comes down to here, so you can see their whole face. And if you watch the show, check it out, man. When they do a fire scene, the face piece, the mask is a plexiglass from here to here, because they want to see the whole actor's face. They don't want to have like a partial view of those here in this fancy setup. They don't want to have they want to have the actor's face like completely visible. So they're made specifically for the show. So anyway, a bunch of those folks from the show are going to be coming. They've told us they're making their arrangements. So you're going to have a bunch of TV stars and such at the show, which is pretty cool stuff. And Steve is just the greatest guy. Besides movies and television, he had 35 years with the Chicago Fire Department. He all the great legends, whether it was Ray Orozco or Bobby Hoff or Ray Hoff or Pete Van Dorp or Richie Edgeworth. He worked with all those guys, and they all worked with him. And just an iconic guy, Danny DeGrice. And so that's going to be really cool. I know that Ricky Riley and the guys he's going to be teaching, so you don't want to miss that, which is always really cool. and it's just exciting. It's just a lot of fun. And what's kind of cool about it is there's like no agenda. I mean, it's like if it's happening in the fire service, it's going to be talked about at FDIC. You know what I mean? And some of the coolest stuff is just hanging out in the hallway, or standing outside of what is it, Steak and Shake, and talking to everybody. You have a kid from Canada, a kid from New Zealand, a gal from Miami, and it doesn't matter. Everybody's wearing the same dopey blue T-shirt, different town maybe on the back of, about fighting fire and talking about making rescues and all that good stuff. So just awesome. The one really cool thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing kind of what we have here, only we're going to be doing a really high level podcast deal, which is going to be in a plexiglass booth with a producer and a recording deal and multiple cameras and the hosts that we have here and others. So it'll be like live from FDIC. And so, we're going to have like the best of the best, and and people can drop in like, oh, John Norman's walking by. Let's see what he thinks about curriculum-based training, right?
Hey, while he figures that out, we're gonna go ahead and get kind of started. So, one of our instructors, Roger Steger, kind of came up with the topic for today, and obviously Roger's very opinionated, and that's why we love him. But his main topic was that how he felt that curriculum-based or state training or recruit school training is just unrealistic and, just not how that firefighters should be taught. And I'm sure that's not the way Roger really meant to say it, was that, just that how we have to depend on, training companies, FDIC or, our company officers, which we have 3 of them on the line right here with, Josh, Sam, and Scott, depend on them to get that training piece out to their firefighters. Look, all of us, unlike the Hiddle family, I mean, Sam Hiddle's son was learning how to force doors at 3 years old and was doing mortise locks at 3.5. So, so he had his training started long before all the rest of us started getting their firefighter training. So, but most, people today, they get to that age, whether it be 19 or 20, whatever, the department or the state allows that particular time for you to be an interior firefighter or allows you to be hired, you have to go get some kind of basic training. And that's what those kind of states and recruit schools. And we'll talk to Scott Kraut, ran a lot of recruit schools for his department. I'm just going the opposite way now. I've been doing fully non-curriculum based training for the last 15, 20 years, with traditions, and now just taking on a part-time gig to try to learn what curriculum based training is about with a state that's close to me. So, going to be able to see, those two different things that happen, being able to speak freely and being able to pass on the wisdom as opposed to what has to be trained and what people have to know. So, Sam, you do a lot of recruit school training in your department. So what are the bosses at those schools mandate you to do? So, because not everybody's at the Sam Hiddle forcible entry level, when they walk into a classroom. So
I actually don't get to do a lot with them on forcible entry. It's too advanced. But I actually looked at it from a different perspective, and that was my job is to expose them to the content. The function is this big, right? Your job as the recruit instructors is to make them proficient at this much. Because if they don't get exposed to what's out there, then they may not know. So I think there's some value in showing them, what is out there, and then dialing it in and spending time with them to make sure that they can perform at basic levels. We just actually are going to a new model for our recruit academy, where they're going to send, they're going to break them into smaller companies, and they're going to send them out to certain people. So we'll get them for large area search and thermal imaging. Another company will get them for high rise. The reason we're going to this new model is we want to build the consistency. Where it is right now, when guys went out for on-the-job training, they might get elevators from this company, and then 5 other people get elevators from this company, and it was inconsistent. And so we're going to build a model where they're going to rotate. They actually won't show up to the academy. They'll report to a firehouse where a certain company that's working with them on elevators will teach every single recruit the same content. And by breaking them down into smaller numbers, we're able to get them more reps and get them out of the academy quicker.
And that, didn't you guys just get a safer grant or something, or you got?
That's why we're looking at the new model. We've got to figure out how to, last number I heard was 67 people by March 14th, which is, that's nothing for the FDNY, but for us, we're not used to running those types of schools. So we're looking at ways to become more efficient, get them more reps.
So, but I meant, so when they go to this company, and of course I'm going to ask questions, that's what I do, is the curriculum is going to be the same for all 67. So there's not going to be like one company teaching the one guy is going to be teaching the same curriculum to each 67 new people.
Yeah, if your company is assigned to high rise, or your company is assigned to elevators or large area search, they will only get elevators from that company, so that we do have the consistency.
I mean, when you were talking about all that, I mean, we just go back, to the curriculum based stuff, is that, obviously there's going to be a company that's going to teach ladders, for your department. I know you guys are good at that sort of stuff. But I mean, to go back to that, we have to, so we teach VES, whether a training company, whether it be a hot class at FDIC, teaches VES, but the firefighter has to come in with those skills to, one, be able to throw a ground ladder, put his PPE on, know how to put his mask on, why do we sound floors, why do we have to close a door, understanding fire behavior. So I mean, that I think this curriculum based stuff, as boring and as mundane as it can be, it certainly sets a framework for when you want to go get that better training, or when you go meet up with you get assigned to a Josh Burchick or a Scott Crowd or a Sammy Hiddle, you got to have a base training. So when they start talking to you, you understand what they're saying. I mean, look, I've been around Sam for the last 5 or 6 years, probably longer than that. And I go to his class and I still don't understand half of what he's saying. And I thought, I've had a pretty good base training of 5 or 6 years. So, but so Scott, let's Crowd. I know that you're probably still driving, but you can talk to some. What is the curriculum based as opposed to the world based fire training in your department?
Well, I think there's a couple things just to, I think what Sam's talking about sounds really cool. But my only question would be is that company, we'll just say, we'll just use a number, company 10 is doing high rise training. And Sammy can answer this now or later. Does company 10 have a curriculum? And if so, who created it? You know what I mean? Because that's the important part is, when you think curriculum-based training or basic skill sheets or skill sets training, it's typically a state mandate, whether they have adopted NFPA or not. It's something that falls under that standard. And to your point, Ricky, it's a must. Obviously, we can't send people out there without the basic foundation. My only concern with it, to Roger's point, if Roger truly feels that it's kind of a mundane and sort of that I would say the problem with it is like anything else, like school today. Everybody gets a trophy. We're just going to push them through, and bad practices are built upon bad practices. So if you haven't, if 50 people are running lines this week, stretching hose, how do we, how in curriculum based training, it's, let's just say it's get the hose, get the cross lay with a pre-connect, whatever, to the front door in 2 minutes. And these are the 5 things of how we're going to do it, like checklist training, and it's important because you need to be able to to judge, one student against the other 49 and how everybody's doing and rank them and obviously a pass fail scenario. My only concern is that when given a basic skill set and a skill sheet, if you will, that these 5 things must occur within 2 minutes, is that we don't have the ability to think. It's literally up, 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 up. And then my concern always has been, which is why we got into the stress stuff late in life here, is that if you do that, what happens when the environment doesn't meet the curriculum? We have a manual for this, and that's amazing. But you know what? What I'm seeing out of the cab right now does not look like what you taught me in recruit school, or it doesn't look like that manual. The manual said that if the fire's here, and this is a single family, then I'm supposed to do this. Well, guess what? It's here, and it's there, and it's everywhere, and there's 6 people in the front yard. And so I know I'm kind of going on a tangent. I guess my point is that curriculum-based training is necessary. My only concern is that it's sort of checklist based, and that it's our job as company officers, obviously, to accept that that's what we're getting when we get the new recruit, and that our job is to build upon said skill set, and depending on where you work and the level of training and the commitment of that company officer, you're going to get a high performer or not.
Let me go back to the first question you asked and clarify. We do spend time with them. They will be able to put on their gear. They will be able to stretch lines, throw ladders before we get to them, before they're given to us. So with that said, though, I also think that some of that generic curriculum-based training that they get initially is beneficial to us as company officers as well. I always tell guys, we cut roofs different than truck 2 cuts roofs, and that's okay. But if we get somebody de-dealt into us that's been through the truck academy, then we know what standard they've been taught to. And so we shouldn't expect them to operate the way we do. We're going to have to modify and work around the knowledge that they've been provided.
Well, also, Sam, you cut roofs and we cut roofs, so it's a whole different thing.
That's what I've been trying to tell you.
But Sam, seriously, does that company that's doing high rise or elevators, do they have a curriculum that's standard that they've created, or that the training academies created? Or how do you keep that consistency?
They it's curriculum that they've created based off best practices within the department. And then, of course, like our good friend Larry Schultz always tells us, it's up to us to say, these are the standards that the department expects, and then this is our perspective, and differentiate between the two while we're providing instruction.
Scott, you good? Scott Kraut?
Yeah. I think that's really cool. Like it's almost like a mentorship program. I just didn't know how you can maintain consistency of, even though one company is teaching high rise, how do you ensure that that's best practices? But it sounds like it is, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of derailed the whole show, because that is like that's a very interesting program, and I think I'm sure we're going to go back to it here in a little bit. But so Josh, I mean, obviously, you're an instructor for your department and stuff like that. How does all this relate to you?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate to be an adjunct instructor, and most of what I'm doing is RIT, survival, and some of that experience, or some of our experiences that we've had. I'm able to inject that into the recruit academy. Now, talking to the instructors, they commonly share their frustrations of, we have to teach this by the book, and we're not allowed to deviate from that. I kind of understand where they're coming from, is we need to get everybody on the same page, have the same expectation, and start them with a very basic fundamental, and they are definitely in the crawl phase commonly. So the instructors at our academy definitely have their work cut out for them. Sometimes that instructor to student ratio gets crazy, and the time they can spend with the students gets super tight. Where I do commend them is that they have stretched out parts of the academy, so that way we can bring in adjunct instructors and give it a little bit more of a real world based training, talk about real life experiences and how we can modify training programs. to make it a little bit more real world. So commendable on that. But their hands are definitely tied often. And granted, might just be my opinion, but it feels like we are so good at holding on to traditions that at times we hold on to some things and some of those textbooks from the 1970s. And like the men here on this platform have done a tremendous amount to hold on to the awesome sides of the tradition and have pushed the envelope of the fire service over the last couple decades. And I think some of our textbooks and our regulations and our codes need to come up to meet that standard. Not saying that we need to be in the walk and run phase during the training academy, but I think we can push the envelope and maybe update some things to give people a little bit more of a real world jump, from the word go. So, and then we're going to fast forward that. Being an engine company captain at a dual company house, at a busy house, we have a lot of recruits that come to us, and it's pretty common that when we get details in, the new recruit comes in, I'm sitting here trying to design a training program just for that day, for that shift, things that we can work on. And I commonly have to take a couple steps back and work out some more of the basics, because I have a 3-year firefighter that hasn't been told some of the tips and tricks of just pulling a common Minuteman crosslay. So we have definitely advanced the fire service, but I think that our schools need to come up a little bit and just push that envelope. I'm not saying go with the high-end skills. We're talking stress inoculation, putting them through the ringer. We need to build that solid foundation. But I think we all need to get on the same page and be like, we don't need to just pull crosslays and dump the hose on the ground, find a coupling and start flicking it out that way. Here's some things that we've learned in the street to like really cut out a lot of steps and make this a finer tuned process. And that's just one example. I'm sure Sam could talk about tips and tricks where we can cut out some steps for forcible entry. You can pick any topic, and we have advanced what we have done in the fire service. So every day when I come in, every third 24-hour shift, sometimes I find myself taking a step back and realizing that some of the archaic things that we've done in the academy, I'm combating that side of it and getting them out of that mindset to kind of push the envelope and see where we can evolve these younger minds. And like I said, I got few-year firefighters that are doing great things, but if they haven't seen it and they haven't been told it, taught it, put their hands on it, they just don't know. And so some of the archaic things are some of the hardships that I have, and then it's all good. Like we're going to train on it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to put our hands on it. But yeah, so sometimes it gets in our way, and we need to do a better job of getting out of our own way and advancing that.
And okay, sorry, go ahead, Bobby.
So great points, Josh. A lot to unpack there. And there's always been, some cognitive dissonance between what we, our expectations and our, top tier, like the perfect recruit or the perfect firefighter, and then the reality of where, most of our folks are. So I think the curriculum aspect of our training is critically important because it's foundational, generally speaking. In other words, it's designed to be digestible and somewhat broad in scope, and not as specific as to tips and tricks and the more nuanced stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and I think one of the things for me, where I often forget when I'm doing training, is that I've been around for, I've got 2-3 years on the job now. And so I forget that not everybody does have 2 or 3 years on the job like I do. So I might use a term, I might think that everybody knows this, but they don't. And I forget what it's like to be a learner. You know what I mean? To really be just learning about something and trying to digest it. Case in point, I participated with a production of a book, and we wanted it to be all inclusive and for firefighter training. And it came out to about roughly 1,100, 1,200 pages, which is a great, hi, Dave. That's Dave Rhodes joining us. Thank you, brother. I told him I needed backup because this looked like a tough crowd. So my backup is here. So David and I ride together now. So kind of like Riley and Hiddle, we're inseparable. So
What's going on?
the Smoke Daddy. So we're talking about curriculum-based training and then training outside of standard curricula and how the two, could marry more. And Josh made some great points that where there is some training that, if you're still pulling out the Cooper hose jacket and showing people how to use it on a busted line, you might want to, rethink that. But, but I think the Cooper hose jacket is still on the ISO list, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if they've taken it off yet. Someone would have to tell me if they have or haven't. And
It's still on the Atlanta Fire Department weekly checkoff to soak it every week.
So it is on the, okay, so there you go.
Soak the hose jacket.
Soak the hose jacket. So I think maybe there's a sweet spot, Josh, when we're talking about how we can take a firefighter, because my point about the 1,200 page book was it's just too much. You know what I mean? Like when you're new to something, you can only manage so much information. You know what I mean? And I think you want to give people a little time to digest. Just taking hose off the back of a rig, in gear, quickly is to everybody on this call no big deal, right? We all have our different, depending on the rig we're pulling it from, the load. We've got different things we do. But to the young guy or gal that just came in and they've just, come out of recruit school, I just had to Google what a Cooper hose jacket was. You're killing me, bro. So I think we need to be understanding of like people who are starting from zero, and then if you grew up in a firefighting family, you might have a little bit of an advantage. But even those folks, when it gets down to some of the, like I was having a phone conversation yesterday with Bobby Morris, and Bobby Morris knows more about forcible entry than I'll ever know ever. You know what I mean? And because he's Bobby freaking Morris, but and listening to him, he's like way over my head. So I'm a basic K-tool guy, for non-invasive stuff. So anyway, I like the conversation. And I think the curriculum constantly needs to be tweaked because technology is constantly evolving. And, some of the things that firefighters have available to them today, they didn't have 5 years ago. So I'm very interested to see what you guys think is lacking from our more, quote unquote, basic training and what you'd add. Because one of the gripes I get running Firefighter One, working at the Firefighter One school, I don't run it for my group, but I stand in as a lecturer from time to time, is the amount of students who come up to me after I talk and say, what's a Cooper hose jacket? What did you mean by dressing the hydrant? What do you mean by, being on the floor? And it's like, you get so used to our vernacular that you forget, our vernacular. Sorry.
And I don't know, I don't know how quickly the fire service can adapt to the rapid change that we've been going through. Probably, let's go in the last 10 years. I mean, just look at the stuff that Kerber's doing. I mean, you can't keep up with it. And it changes. The first study says this, the third study says that, and the sixth study says this. And that's not a hit on them. And they're advancing us in the fire service, but a book and a curriculum can't keep up with that. From fire engineering books, how long does it take to get a book published? Goodness gracious, how long does it take to get an article published? And that could be passing us by already by the time that the next study comes out, or the next the next thing comes out in the fire service that's proven, by people that are doing the job each and every day. The part about the curriculum-based piece is that I think that a lot of people forget, and I know Roger doesn't like responsibility too much, but somebody's got to be responsible for the firefighter. I mean, it's great that we have a training company, or Chief Rhodes has a training company, or FDIC is able to call these instructors in and teach all these different methods of, fighting a fire, whether it be Sam's forcible entry, Josh teaching RIT, a class that probably need to listen to is Josh's class on some of his RIT stuff, or, any of the numerous highly capable instructors there. But, somebody's got to be, responsible for the firefighter. When we have an injury, we have a line of duty death, or something like that, all that's going to get called into question. So Dave, you got something on that, or? Chief Rhodes, I'm sorry, I thought I saw you.
All right. Yeah, I mean, the curriculum can't keep up. It's too slow of a process. So I think that's why these training companies exist and have been successful, because it's like special ops. It's a small little nimble unit that can change rapidly and go deliver the latest, greatest. And curriculum is probably, other than the basic stuff kind of stays sort of the same, I would say 90%. But once you get into intermediate and advanced stuff, that's changing all the time. So it is hard to keep up. I think the core basic firefighter books and stuff are good. The main things that have changed recently, obviously, are the ventilation stuff and some terminology. But for the most part, I mean, rolling the hose is rolling the hose, and the parts and pieces are somewhat the same. So there is a constant that's good for curriculum, but definitely lacking in the advanced and intermediate areas as far as curriculum.
To Josh's point, though, I thought I knew thermal imaging till I sat down with Andy Starnes for about, listened to him for about an hour. And then I realized I don't know anything about thermal imaging.
Right.
Yeah, there's somebody on this phone call, on this Zoom call, that can do a thermal imaging class. He was trying to teach my friends in Lancaster and was talking about 7 levels above,
Easy. We
about
only
thermal
have
imaging.
a certain amount of time.
But I mean, so, part of the company that Josh, Scott and Sam were all part of, that was all based on my hero, Pete Lund, and, and Pete's whole premise for starting this training company with me is that we need to teach people what is not in the book. Because there's a lot of stuff in the book, and then you walk into the firehouse, and, we start almost every class, it's like, you walk in the firehouse and you stick the ads in the door. And, then there's always some senior firefighters like, who taught you to do that? Why are you doing it? Why are you putting it on the lock like this? Why aren't you beating it like this? And you're like, the firefighter's just overloaded, because that's what he learned from the book, or that's what he learned from his fire school instructor. That's what, go back to, Scott Kraut, that's what he learned from his check sheet. Now, you got somebody like, Pete Lund, or, anybody from his company at Rescue 2, or Sammy Hill, or any of those guys over top of your shoulder. Now you're living at their expectation level, and what needs to be done to force that door. And that's where, I think where Chief Rhodes was talking about, where the intermediate companies and the advanced companies come into play, is that, hey, somebody has taken the time, an instructor, whether they volunteer their time or they get paid to do it, has taken the time to get that firefighter to a certain level. They know how to put their gear on. They know what a Halligan bar is. Sam, most people will just say, this is an adze, this is a pick, this is a fork. And then Sam will teach you the mathematical forces of each one of those, in his class. But, you don't know that, your first day out, I mean, other than Sam's kid, when they goes up and shows up at that fire. So all important stuff. And Sammy, I'll let you chime in here, and I'll cut out here for a bit.
I'm going to say this, and it's going to come off as a shameless plug until I explain that we put our money where our mouth is on this. I think the biggest thing as far as basic curriculum that I see as a problem in the fire service is people are still using the IFSTA manual. And when you look at the IFSTA manual, it's my understanding that it has been built to accommodate the fire service, and the fire service includes 70% volunteers. And that's not a knock on the volunteers by any means. But what it does is it really takes it down to some very rudimentary stuff. And I've seen some of the people in there that shouldn't be writing. We finally got our academy to go over to the Penwell book, the Clarion book, Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2, that's written by, instead of a board, you have just kind of like what we're doing with the modules as far as recruits going out to certain companies to learn. You have certain individuals with expertise that write particular chapters for that. I think that's a good place to start. And then they can go out to the companies and adapt and tweak some of the basic learning based on your strategic objectives and your deployment model and the resources available to you.
Yeah, Sammy, I think you said it perfect. I really appreciate what you just said about that. And to be clear, that's kind of what I was getting at too. I did a really bad job explaining that, was just those basic things that we're being taught. Yeah, we're from the 70s and the more archaic program, and we're just kind of repeating the same thing. So when we're telling our recruits when they're coming out, hey, let's pick up a ladder, and to do it, you have to lunge, bend over sideways. When you pick it up, you got to rotate 180 degrees. Look for all these things. Or every time you pull a hose line, whether it's 200 feet or 500 feet, drop the back half of it on the ground and start flaking all that out around shrubs and trees and cars and garden apartments. I think that's what I was getting at, is we can advance those little pieces of it. Here's how to keep hose on your shoulder. Here's how to pick up a ladder in a real world setting. And we're still in that crawl phase. We're still in the fundamental phase, but we have people that are incredibly intelligent. There's information everywhere. And I agree wholeheartedly. Like, we can advance that crawl phase, and then that's where traditions can come in and do the intermediate and advanced and grow that side of it, and do the stress inoculation bit over there. But 100% agree. Like, we can still advance that crawl phase a little bit and make it more real world, make it more ergonomic, make it more kinesthetic, and just advance the beginning stage, because we do work with intelligent people. It's okay to push them a little bit, and we can get away from what we were doing in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s and bring it into 2023.
I'm gonna kind of throw it to Scott Kraut here a second, because obviously I grew up in his organization, and it's a very fortunate organization, whereas they hire the person, send them to a recruit school. At that particular time it was just 26 weeks. That was EMT and fire. I'm sure it's extended by now with all the stuff that they have to cover now, but they came away with a state certification using fire department based instructors from within their own department. So I go back to that. I can't tell you the day I started recruit school, in 1985 April, but we had a curriculum sitting in our books all ready to go. We knew every day what we were going to do for the next 26 weeks, every topic and everything like that. So Scott, how does that recruit and using some of the instructors within the department work for your organization?
It's probably not much different than anywhere else. Unfortunately, I think we're all suffering from having to, Sammy mentioned 60 some people in a few months, and, we're struggling with the same thing. Everybody's trying to put butts in seats, and unfortunately, what that typically means is that we sacrifice some of the skills, or the knowledge, skills, and abilities to perform the basic function. And I think, I've said this for years, that, and to Josh's point and Sammy's point, I don't want to, crap on ISTA, but, what do you that's how I like to think about it. What do you need to perform in the street on day one? Like, how are you going to, given the fact that you're not expected you're expected to follow, your officer, and just like anything else, unfortunately, there's some good and some bad. But really, what makes us different than the guy across the street, right? We have PPE, we have SCBA, we have a portable radio, and we have a few items of firefighting equipment to keep it super simple. And that's what I tell probies, that much like Josh, I'm in a multifunction house. I'm always getting recruits, or rookies. So that's what I tell them. Hey, what do you know about this portable radio? What do you know about your SCBA? What do you know about your personal protective equipment? That, tell me all about it, because that's really, that and your training is what makes you different from, my neighbor, to be able to perform our job. And I like to think about it, it's become somewhat cliche, but I like to think about it like a sports team, or a sports environment, right? You have kids that go to school and they play sports, and that's it. And that, had fun, good time. Then you have kids that excel and they go to college and play sports, and then but very small percentage go on to be professional athletes. And I think that's the most important part for me is, it's fundamental skill set when they come to me. I understand my expectation is not very high, and that's okay. Like you said, 20 some weeks to teach potentially a complete lifestyle to somebody. Chief Rhodes, rolling hose. Yeah, rolling hose is rolling hose. Some people, that is literally the first time they've ever seen a piece of fire hose because a buddy told them, hey, it's a cool job. You work 10 days a month or whatever, and I think to me, that's where I sort of transition when I get the new Proby is, look, first off, obviously I try to draft, I try to pay attention in recruit school and make suggestions or pick who I get, which is somewhat unfair. But when I get them, I'm like, here's the deal. How serious are you about this profession? Because we're not messing around here. The ads is 6 inches long. That's important. And I'll tell you why. And we get into all that because it's not a joke, right? We're here. We are professionals. We are here to save lives, property. There are companies that'll survive. You can certainly, I've got a guy right now that I told him the other day, I'm like, you can certainly go somewhere else and your first year area is probably not important. But to me, it's very important, So, I think curriculum-based training is obviously necessary. I just think that if our goal, and I know everybody in this group is your goal is fluency, which is speed and accuracy in every piece, forcible entry, ladder placement, hose stretches, everything you can do, then it's really, and we've talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I believe, it really falls on the company officer to continue that education, that you get this molded individual with very, very little bit of knowledge, and it's our job to advance that, and unfortunately I think that's how it'll always be, even though I think that's the only way it can be, because otherwise, what Sam's department's doing, which I think is amazing, is, those companies, I'm sure, that are chosen to teach high rise or elevators are probably very, very strong companies. And, we've all got them. Everybody's got a standard bell curve. And so, hopefully the instructors that are teaching the curriculum, even though it's state certified or mandated, hopefully they're able to sprinkle a little real life realism stuff in there without, to Josh's point, without getting past the crawl phase,
So I think two things. I think that, and we're very proud of our Firefighter 1 and 2 curriculum. Thank you, Sam. Available from Fire Engineering Books and Video. Just kidding. Shameless plug. But it is a great curriculum, very, very comprehensive. And I think, to Josh's point, I think there's probably maybe an opportunity. And I truly believe that all firefighting is local. I truly believe that. I think it's a very local profession. And obviously in the bigger metros, the Wichitas, the DCs, the Virginia, the bigger towns in Virginia, the bigger towns in Georgia, Atlanta's, but there the curricula needs to be as obviously as comprehensive as possible, because the incredible diversity of opportunity that you're going to face in terms of the diversity of calls, right? In other words, if you're in DC, you could go to a single family residence 1 minute, and the next minute, you could be in a brand new multi-million-dollar, 30-story high rise, and then 5 minutes later, you're in one of the most iconic, structures in America, a monument, or the U.S. Postal Office or whatever, right? And the same thing, in Wichita to a large degree. You've got a very robust downtown, very, very heavy-duty commercial area. You've got, really complex things going on. But take a trip outside of DC, maybe 70, 80 miles, get out into, say, maybe Harper's Ferry or down in that part of the state, or take a trip outside of Wichita and get down there, Independence, Kansas, or something outside of there. There, the firefighters may not need to know, may not need to have that level of complexity in their initial exposure. Good to have, right? But there they may need to have maybe grain bin rescue. Maybe they need to have a little bit about agricultural tractor extrications or rescues. Maybe they need to know a little bit more about aquatic issues, or a little bit more about those types of things. Combine. There was I read an article the other day about a gentleman who fell into a combine machine. Where do you begin with that, right? So I think that it's a great point to Josh's point, and maybe what we're talking about here is how do we merge what we think to be the necessary curricula in a given area with the necessary advancement, and maybe it's done incrementally. In other words, maybe we don't just do it in, okay, you've been on the job for 2 years, now we're going to make you take, firefighter 2 or whatever we call it, firefighter, advanced firefighter, or senior firefighter, whatever nomenclature we put to it. But maybe it's done more incrementally based upon interest and such. In other words, or even maybe capability, because we tend to try to think that everybody's going to be able to, handle all of our needs. And I'll tell you, I can tie an overhand knot, and that's about it. And I have tried. I am not the rope guy. You know what I mean? I'll go over the wall. You tie me off. I have no problem with it. But if I tie you off, you're going to die. You're doomed, because it'll be a shoelace knot. You know what I mean? And somebody have to just pull the other end, and you don't go flailing to the ground. And I was the first to admit it. And luckily, I think that in our industry, I worked with men and women who were freaking awesome. Oh, bowling on a bike with a double blah, 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 blah. They got it. They're doing it in the dark with their behind their heads, and I wasn't. Other side of the coin, I had no problem with confined space and stuff like that. I had buddies who were like, yeah, I ain't going in there. You know what I mean? That's not for me. So I think that maybe there's a sweet spot, Josh and Scott. You know what I'm talking about? In other words, man, and maybe that's why. And I'm just going to throw this out there. Maybe that's why guys like Traditions and Aaron's group and Jason Bresler's group, the Leadership Under Fire guys. Maybe that's why we need those groups. Because if you want to learn about fireground tempo and all that, Jason's guys have that down to a science, and really great training. David goes out with Brent Hollander, and they do a wonderful class on incident command, but it's incident command at the next level, right? They take, you got to have a basic understanding of incident command before you go into Rhodes and Hollander's class, but where they take you to, is the next level, right? And I've watched the Traditions guys do the training, and it's just. So I think there's a place for that, because not everybody in the systems that I was in is ready to be a Hollander level certified incident commander, or a Rhodes level, you know what I mean, or a Ricky Riley level, engine company person, or a Sam Hiddle level, forcible entry or fire behavior level person, and that's okay. You know what I mean? We can't all sit down with Dan Majikowski and talk about all of that, right? But we can all talk about kind of the basics, and I think that we have a tremendous tendency to talk about the what we sometimes call tradition. We confuse with normative behavior. We say the word tradition, and tradition is not normative behavior. Normative behavior are things we've done over and over and over again. Traditions are actually customs, courtesies, ceremonies. That's traditions, behavioral expectations, values, virtues, mores. Normative behavior is what we've done in terms of what we've presented people as the basic skill sets. To that point, I think, Josh, you're spot on. Those require a constant level of review, maybe every 5 years, maybe every 3 years, and then an update, like, okay, this is now a basic expectation. Like when I first came on, being able to operate an iPad or whatever to fire and manage a portable radio today, even is, ours had push to talk, and one person had it, and it wasn't you, it was the officer, and that was it. There was no there was nothing in your face piece, there was nothing, none of that existed. It was so now they do, right? So all I'm saying is that now maybe when you're putting your gear on, yeah, is your escape device connected correctly? Is your pass device activated? So that's the kind of updating that I think is critical and basic, and that you're absolutely right. We need to add, but the normative behavior stuff, that's normative behavior. Stay away from my traditions and customs and courtesies. I'll hurt you.
All right, we're getting kind of close here, so we'll start with Scott. Scott, you want to wrap anything up, or Kraut?
No, just obviously thanks for the opportunity, and yeah, I guess we I guess we need to be, and we are, we all are part of the solution, which is good. I used to think when Ricky would be like, hey, I need you to go do a hose line class and wherever on the East Coast, and I was like, ugh, I really, like, they don't care what I have to say. And then you get there and meet the men and women, and really, to Sam's point, maybe it's a volunteer company, really mesh with them, and just they're starving for this education. So, I think it's great that we all do what we do. I think it's super important. And to your point, I think everybody has made this point, but I think the update piece is mission critical. I never really thought about that, but yeah, we can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting something different. So that's all I got.
All right, thanks, Scott. Josh Burchick?
Always, thanks for including me. I appreciate it. Yeah, hold on to the things that are worth holding on to. And then if we can push and advance somewhere, let's do it and clean it up. And it doesn't matter what position or rank or how many years of experience you have, just do something every day or every shift to make yourself just 1% better. And no wrong can come from that. Even if you make mistakes, you're going to learn from it. And let's just do something every day to make ourselves just a tiny bit better. And it's just going to be infectious throughout the fire service. So I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, Josh. Any chance we get, we want to hear from you. So Sammy Hiddle.
I would just say the discussion today is very complex, but I agree with Chief Halton. It ultimately comes back to local. And like Dr. Kern has said, and just has really stuck with me, have no doubt that your department is giving you the best training that they can give you based on their financial ability and the resources available to them. But that does not mean that it's adequate. So you do have to get out there and try to advance in some ways. I can tell you one thing that we've done here in Wichita that's really benefited us, and that bodes to what Josh was saying, is we put you through the academy. And then if you decide you want to ride a truck, you sign up and you get accepted to the truck academy. After you go through the truck academy, then you want to get into special operations. We have a special operations academy. So we keep building on those tiers. And Chief Kelly Ross is doing a lot with some officer development stuff that is something that we used to not do. So if you want to be an officer, we're putting you through a safety officer program, and then also putting you through some basic decision-making algorithms for company officer level.
You don't have an engine company academy? That's what put fires out, right?
No, you can put fires out with Halligan's, just most people don't realize it. No, that is mostly what our fire academy is it's very heavily based on engine company operations.
I got you, Sam. Chief Rhodes, nice of you to join. You got some parting comments for us here?
Sure. Make sure you got the right instructors. A great instructor will take any curriculum and give you good training. But a bad instructor will take great curriculum and give you crappy training. So keep that in mind.
All right, Chief Bobby.
Well, we're always going to be faced with the dilemma of change, evolution, growth, and keeping up with it. And I'll say this honestly, I think there's no greater example in society than the fire services, in particular the American Fire Service, and that's what I know, and that's what I'm proudest of. And the American Fire Service has always adapted, adjusted, accepted different challenges, irrespective of their source or their intent. Case in point, the current lithium-ion battery issue. Right now across America, and I know all the gentlemen on this call right now are looking into the lithium-ion battery issue, and how do we manage it? How do we, deal with it? What do we need to know about it? So we're learning all about stored energy. We're learning all about, the cathodes and how they react. And Sam is actually breaking down hydrogen into good, all kinds of different things. And I'm sure Sam could give us a 2 or 3 hour lecture on lithium-ion batteries, but we're all now aware of the pack type and the cylinder type, and how that it does affect fire investigation, how it affects fire growth and behavior, the dangers, how do we pack them, all of those issues. So no other industry is doing that. We are, you know what I mean? Now, should the onus be on the people who are producing these batteries? Maybe, but they're not. You know what I mean? Should the government be coming in and regulating them more or helping out more? Well, maybe not. I don't know. So to Josh's point, in the academy now, or the basic training now, you better have a section on lithium-ion battery fires. And it's the skateboards and the motorized skateboards and the scooters and the hell, battery operated anything is probably a lithium-ion battery. So that's just one case in point where the evolution of society and technology is requiring the fire service to adjust its basic training and then even its more advanced training. And so, that right there lets us know that we can never let our guard down. And if you look at any of our textbooks, mine included, show me the chapter on lithium-ion batteries. It ain't there, because the problem is probably about 5 years old, maybe 6 years old. Maybe a little bit longer, but now it's growing to where it's got to, it's in every community. And there's other issues as well, right? Even our whole prospectus on, who can be a firefighter and who can't be a firefighter. When I started, there was minimum height requirements, right? And I think there were probably, even when you signed up, David, there were probably minimum height requirements. Probably you too, Ricky. You had it. Alan Brunacini didn't meet the minimum height requirement. A kind nurse in the induction process in Phoenix added an inch, and we got Alan Brunacini, but he was turned down in multiple locations. So to Josh's point, that was the normative behavior that had to change. Just because you're short doesn't mean you can't be a firefighter. Obviously, we
Look at Sammy.
Right. I was going to say I would have disqualified him because he was Italian, but that's just me. Firefighting is an Irish profession. I'm just kidding. It's a joke. But you know what I mean? We sometimes create arbitrary standards, or even maybe we create benchmarks that they're outdated. You know what I mean? That we no longer need to be that concerned with. But I think this is a great conversation, and I think that what I like about it is I love all the little training groups that are out there, and I think they all have tremendous value, and I love seeing them, here and there, and doing programs here and there, and because I always pick up something from them. But I think that we have to Josh's point, just keep our eye, and Scott's point, keep our eye on what we consider to be the critical basics, and never assume that, never assume that you've got it down, because you don't, if you got questions about any of the groups that we mentioned today, just give us a shout, whether it was Brothers in Battle, or the Leadership Under Fire, or Traditions Training, or what's Aaron's group's name? what is Aaron guys called? Aaron Heller's group. Oh, he's going to kill me. On Scene. Thank you, Pete. On Scene. Reach out to us. We got links to all those guys and gals. They're wonderful people. They'd be happy to help you. And I'll tell you this, it is always good to bring in somebody from the outside. It really is. You can never go wrong bringing in an outside instructor. 99.9% of the time. No rule is perfect. But
Watch out for those extrication guys.
You're right. But there are occasional wackadoodle dandies out there. So yeah. But any of the folks we just mentioned are wonderful people. They'll do a great job. Absolutely phenomenal. So anyway, it's a great topic. Thank you for having us on, Ricky. I appreciate it. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Sam and Josh, and please go to the Traditions Training website. These are wonderful people. They got amazing programs. Some of the best instructors in the country. They recently picked up a kid named Shaw. I think he's got potential. I'm not so sure about Mitchell. I don't know. Could be a fly by night, but
They're two busy dudes, man.
Yeah, I can't imagine their lives, man. So anyway, thank you for having us on. Appreciate you. God bless.
Hey, Chief Rhodes, thanks for joining us, man. We appreciate it.
Well, he's actually called the Smoke Daddy. I don't know why he's got a Roadie on there. Road Deeds. You can change your name on these things, Dave.
Just Rhodes, D as in David.
Yeah, because
Hey, that's
Hey, just a point of
Pete's gonna give us the
clarification.
hook here in a minute.
Point of clarification. You were talking about you weren't much of a rope guy, but didn't you get accused of stealing a bunch of that hemp rope back in the day?
No, that was pot.
Oh, okay.
Jesus.
Thought it was.
All right, I'm going to
rope.
wrap it up here. You guys can talk about that.
Hey, it's legal now.
I hear you.
Legal now.
So hey, Pete's going to pull the hook on us here, and be sure to check out Fire Engineering's webpage, and obviously FDIC for what we got coming up in April. Obviously, we can't wait to get back out there. Thanks to the Clarion Events Group for allowing us to do this program and having all our people on, and we greatly appreciate it. All of us at Traditions Training say thank you, and hit us up, give us a call, tune in for the next podcast. We appreciate it.
And one of
Thank you
these
very
days,
much.
one of these days, Crowd will have a camera.
Yeah. Well, he's got his headband on. He didn't want you to see his headband. So